Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll kick off. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, of course you can. It's nice to see so many people out there, a miserable night, nothing on television. That stands out a mile. Just to introduce everyone, my name's Brian Miner. I'm here because I'm a presenter on Salford City Radio. We have a plug-in for Salford City Radio. And I've done one or two of the political programmes, and I can stand in the middle and say I ain't got no bias anyway. I might be wearing a red rose at the moment, but that's a rugby one. Nothing whatsoever to do with politics. We have 4 speakers, Councillor Mary, Councillor Owen, Mr Berg and Mr Morris, who will all do 5 minutes each. And then once they finish, then the floor will be open for questions. Anyone can come in with a question. We'll say the purpose of the night tonight is because the referendum next month, and the purpose is maybe to help make your mind up or change your mind whether you're for or against an elected mayor. There are two other referendums coming up in Manchester and Liverpool, where Salford leads, Manchester follows, I'm glad to say. So, without more ado, I think we'll crack on. We'll say 5 minutes for each speaker, and then a minute for a question. Don't make speeches, just a question, please, because there's quite a lot of people, and no doubt you all want to say something. So we're going to start off with Mr. Burke.
Ladies and gentlemen, in replacing the council leader and ceremonial mayor facilitated in legislation by the last Labour government with a directly elected mayor is a systemic change, not a magic potion. In essence, it transfers power from small political groups to the people at large. Of course, it is a theoretical possibility that the existing council leader could end up as a directly elected mayor, and though he will not have changed, the system and his considerations will have changed. As I said, having elected mayors is not a magic potion, and there are some things it cannot do. If Councillor Mary became mayor, it is not a magic potion that would make him any brainier or even any prettier. But it would do some things. It would make him answerable not primarily to his group of councillors, who will no longer hypothetically be able to remove him, but to the people as a whole, who would be the final arbiter of who runs the council. Indeed, the probability is even in the Labour Party the councillors would no longer keep the power to decide who is their nominee to run the council. That would fall to the wider membership of their party. No wonder it is unpopular with councillors. Indeed, as happens sometimes in America, or even originally in London, a mayor or prospective mayor can appeal over the heads of his party to the electors as a whole, as an independent if need be. This is indeed people power, and it is not just theoretical. Councillor Mary, or indeed any mayor, could no longer rely on the electors of 1 out of 20 wards to maintain his political base, and so concentrate a disproportionate amount of council spending on them. He would have to appeal to people in all or most of the 20 wards, which is much fairer and far more democratic. To turn to my favourite topic, it is unlikely that, unlike what happens with council leaders or councillors deciding, that any directly elected mayor could continually win election while the council tax was year after year continually higher than in all the 6 neighbouring councils, as happens in Salford. This on its own would tend to lead to, at least in comparative terms, lower council tax and substantial savings for Salford people. And with an elected mayor, unlike in the present system, there is a reasonable chance, say, the Conservatives being elected on a proposal to reduce council tax somewhat, or us in the Mayoral Alliance, who wish to appeal direct to the people, getting a mayor elected who would reduce per person expenditure levels to roughly that of Traffic Council, and in the process halve or more than halve council tax. entering the Wandsworth and Westminster Council League of low council tax, instead of forever forcing most people in Salford to pay over twice the council tax that people in Westminster and Wandsworth pay. Such is the kind of change that a directly elected mayor can lead to.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Councillor Mary, please.
Just to explain, Councillor Owen has kindly said, seeing that I was directly attacked, would I mind going first in this case? And can I make it clear to Mr. Berg that I'm certainly not suggesting that this referendum is about whether I could be made any prettier or whether I could be made any brainier. I happen to think there are more important issues on the agenda than those. I think this is essentially about a system at the moment that gives everybody in Salford a vote every year to elect a councillor and to elect the full council, towards a system that would only give them a vote every 4 years. And to be told that that's more democratic, I would suggest is an insult to the people of Salford, particularly as the person proposing it has no connection with Salford whatsoever. He does not live in Salford, he does not experience the services of Salford, and yet he has the nerve to come and lecture us about the level of council tax. It wouldn't be so bad if this wasn't based on the false prospectus that you've just heard from the proposer of this particular motion. The idea that the mayor could somehow on his own actually cut the council tax in Salford by 50% is something that has been dismissed as pie in the sky, not by the Labour Party, but by the Conservative Party and Liberal Democrats in the full council meeting that has recently taken place. And in fact, the Conservative Party has made it absolutely clear that although technically they might be in favour of a mayor, they want nothing whatsoever to do with the mayoral alliance. Because, unfortunately, Mr. Berg has chosen to turn it into a referendum, not just about the system, but about the propaganda that he's put out, and you've seen on your seats tonight. I have no objection to it being on the seats, I just wish it was truthful. He talks, for example, about cutting all regeneration expenditure in Salford. What he fails to mention is that the budget he's identified includes, for example, the money to fill potholes in, the money to do lampposts, and as has quite been correctly been pointed out by my good friend Mr. Middleton from Langworthy, it would leave communities up and down this city bereft of the particular project that they see being finished. He's talked about the money we spend on children's services being way above what Trafford spends, without actually mentioning to the electorate that we have way more children in care than Trafford, and in fact he would be setting an illegal budget if he did not make provision for them. Perhaps he would like them to go back to the Victorian workhouse. He's talked about cutting the budgets we spend, for example, on the elderly down to the level of Trafford. That would mean 6,000 elderly people in Salford, as a result of Mr. Berg's proposals, would be deprived and help and support by Salford. What he doesn't realise is that the Salford criteria for helping the elderly is way more than the criteria for Trafford. Trafford only helps the severe and critically needs of the elderly. We help people with moderate needs. 6,000 elderly people in Salford, if this mayoral referendum went through and the mayoral alliance got their way, would be deprived of health and assistance by this city council. Hundreds would of course be made redundant and thrown on the scrapping, who are doing a good job for Salford. But all this pales into insignificant compared to the change he is proposing. So successful has his change been in Doncaster, where his friend, the English Democrats, actually run the mayoralty, is that the Secretary of State has said under the mayoralty, Doncaster has become the worst run council in the entire country. It is the only council that has had to have commissioners sent in by the Secretary of State, supported by all political parties represented in the Westminster Parliament. It is the area where 11,000 people have recently petitioned the council to get rid of the mayoralty and to get rid of the English Democrat mayor. Now, I may not be perfect. Many of you may disagree with me, right? Many of you have actually opposed me on the council chamber, and I can see you nodding your head here. But do you really want a system where all the power is concentrated in one person, as Mr. Berg has even conceded a theoretical possibility? And I'll concede the theoretical possibility. I would oppose it even if it was a Labour Party person exercising those political powers. It is right that I should be accountable to the whole of the people of this city. And every year I submit myself and the Cabinet and all the Labour councillors, every year we submit ourselves to a referendum. It's called a council democratic election, where everybody in Salford has the power to vote and the power to take that decision. Last year, I'm delighted that the Labour Party gained 54% of the vote. Others may not be delighted that that was the case, but have actually subjected themselves to the democratic challenge as well. I don't believe that only doing that every 4 years to elect what could be in principle a dictator for Salford is the right approach. I would rather have the democratic accountability, I'd rather subject myself to that system than take a chance that every 4 years the people of Salford will make the right decision. I think it's wrong in principle, I think for all the reasons I've shown it's wrong in practice, and I think we're being asked to vote on a false prospectus. That's why I urge you all to vote no in the referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. I find it rather funny that the head of Labour in Salford would actually deride a Labour policy so much. Remember, the elected mayor system was brought in by the Labour Party. As Community Secretary, the local MP Hazel Blaze is in big favour of it. And on the leaflets, they're direct quotes from the Manchester Evening News. Google it. If you've got a phone, Google it. Right? It's a blatant lie. She has actually said she's in favour of directly elected mayors and wants to see more of them. Okay? So, Google it. It's not just on my leaflet. You can find it anywhere you want. He's also brought in the issue about Doncaster, which, fair enough. Let's go back to the beginning of the Mayoral in Doncaster, where 21 Labour councillors were convicted for fraud. The people have had enough of Labour in Doncaster, and they switched to the English Democrat mayor. Okay. Yes, the Audit Commission went in, but thankfully I've actually got a copy of the Labour plan for their campaign, which actually has the audit report in, right? Which actually says, and I will repeat, because it's actually in the Labour document, councillors were described as venomous, vicious and vindictive, responsible for widespread bullying and harassment of council officers. This is actually in your document that you emailed out to your party activists, okay? It said the Commission condemned councillors for putting their hatred of the mayor before their responsibilities to local people and electors. Okay? That's what Labour councillors are like. Right?
Yeah.
Okay? It's quite simple. The report condemns Labour councillors. Now we go to Stoke, a recent one that's just changed. Let's look at the Labour mayor. Arrested on corruption charges. Two systems. One, the current system that's in Salford. One's the elected mayor system in Stoke. What's the common denominator? Labour councillors, Labour politicians, corruption. Okay?
Yeah.
Now let's get back to Salford. In Salford, it's true. Look it up, it's true.
It's not slander at all.
Look it up.
Prove it.
Prove it.
Go on your phone, Google it.
Now. Google it now.
It was to do with 50,000. It was to do with £50,000 on a.
Ask him in a bit. Let him have his 5 minutes,
It was to do
please.
with £50,000 on a.
Let him have his 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, then we come to in Salford. In Salford, we want 168,000 people to choose who their leader is. Right? Councillor Murray never had 168,000 people vote for him. He never got more than 38. Right? Okay? So we want 168,000 people. But why is Councillor Mary so set against it? Right? There's Labour mayors up and down the country. There's 4 of them. Okay, there is 3 Tories, 2 Lib Dems, an English Dem, and the rest are independents. But that's what worries them, is because most of them are independents. Now, when the elected mayor system came in, it has recently changed. A couple of years ago, yeah, having an elected mayor gave them more powers than over the council leader. But what Labour brought in was the strong leader model, right, another Labour policy, which then gave the council leader extra powers. Right? A lot of people didn't know that. He actually got extra powers. Right? But if Councillor Merry does actually stand up each year and puts his job on the line and says, do you still want me for leader? I must applaud him for that, because he doesn't have to. Under the strong leader model, if the councillor's elected, he's actually in for 4 years. And again, that's under the actual policy.
Same as a mayor.
Okay, but if he does that, then I must applaud him for that. Because not many politicians from any party would. Alright? So there you have it. We want 168,000 people to choose who runs their council. They either succeed or they fail. If they fail, then you vote them out. At the moment, nobody out there, 168,000, apart from the current councillors, can vote Councillor Mary out. Right? His own ward of Broughton, is it? Was actually put into a Manchester MP's constituency for the last election. Right? No, it's not irrelevant, because you'll understand why. At the moment, we're going on about boundary commission changes. You've got 2, 3 MPs now looking after Salford. With a directly elected mayor, that's one person fully accountable to 168,000 people, and they're responsible for everything within the boundary of the city of Salford. Right? Unlike Councillor Mary, if people in Broughton, they go to their MP, it's Stringer. Next door, they go to Hazel Blair's. Right? Next door, they go to Barbara Keeley. With a directly elected mayor, one person accountable to 168,000 people.
Thank you, well done, yes. Just go turn up, mate.
Well, I've heard, I'm Councillor Owen, Leader of the Liberal Democrats. I'm the gentleman responsible for calling this showdown this evening. I have to say, the tone of this meeting is not going as per I thought the script would go. I didn't think I would hear massive accusations of corruption and God knows what regarding this council.
We never said this council, let's get it right.
Excuse me, please.
This council.
Look,
we've already heard lies from one end, not the other.
Excuse me, I'm speaking, let you have your say, and you should be privileged that, you know, we've got this evening to answer.
Well, you never turned up to our meeting.
I wonder why. I wonder why.
Okay.
Right. The principle of this mayoral referendum, I think Mr. Berg has been the main player behind this in a lot of respects. But you've got to understand there's been a lot of naiveness in regarding the way the campaign's been formulated by the English Democrats, Community Action Party and Mr. Berg. You have to get to the core of how councils work. It's not just a matter of having a referendum to elect a mayor for 4 years to run the city of how he may please and pick his cabinet. This is about having a substantial council makeup of alternative parties, even at this moment in time, even though we've not got that. Why are smaller parties going every year to the ballot box, even though they may get beat? It's to gain a place on this council. Not only on this council, everywhere else. I want to take Mr. Berg to task on a few issues. You cannot reference Salford to Trafford and a lot of the other councils, Oldham and Rochdale. Totally different makeup. The urban structure of them areas is totally different to Salford. And what does annoy me is that all of us as councillors received this letter from Mr. Berg regarding explaining that, you know, it's the position in putting forward to Salford voters the choice of Traffordising Salford City Council. Where does that go? Let's look at the arguments. Let's some principal points. Trafford has a better base rate regarding council tax collections. If you look at Salford, we have a higher A-band differential. To bring that up to scratch, for Salford to collect as much money or from Trafford on their A-band, we would have to increase the council tax to something like £1,200 to match their collection. Now that can't be right. That is putting council taxes up. The other issue is the way that we run the budgets in this city, and the argument that's been put forward is about sustainable regeneration and not doing the regeneration that's required. We need massive amounts of regeneration. Over the last 13 years, we have not met the requirement that's required. And the reason being is, if you look at some of the areas in Salford and Langworthy that are not completed, the reason you cannot raid the regeneration budget is because of houses like this that are still stood. This is the money, the monies that pay for these to be demolished and regenerated. The other issue that I take to task with Mr. Berg is that out of the sustainable regeneration budget, it pays for a hell of a lot of things. And the things that we pay for are supporting people, which this year's budget we've had to cut, with highways. And, you know, the issue is, if you take a common sense view over this, on the overall picture, you can have your position on whether you want to be choosing an elected mayor. But the principal argument is this. Salford has, and I'm on the opposition, has gradually over the years built its status up. It doesn't need fixing. It's not broken. It doesn't need the mayoral status. And I have to come back and pick on the stats also. Out of 38 authorities, only 13 have chose to go the mayoral route. Now, I've got this wrong. 25 have not. But before I leave this evening, I want to make it quite clear to you also that if he was to go down the route of having a mayor who could choose his own cabinet, what would happen if it fails? You would have to wait 4 years. Believe me. I have to say to you this evening, this is about perception of this city, Salford. It runs with the formula that we've got. It doesn't need changing, and to come in from the outskirts of Salford to throw down this challenge is completely nonsense. The people of this city, not Mr. Berg, will decide whether we want an elected mayoral position.
And not you next, Mayor, either.
I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me. If you cannot win and you feel you're losing, I suggest you leave. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the four principal speakers. You take questions from the floor, but please keep the questions short. Don't make speeches, please, because I know that everyone wants to have a go. I think that gentleman there with his hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've seen 2 or 3 versions of the leaflet that we've got here. On each of them, there's been considerable emphasis on the proposition of halving the council tax. In the first place, I think certainly in one of the leaflets that I've seen, there's been some dubious axioms brought into the argument, particularly the argument that if Salford reduced its council tax collection demand on the people, that the subvention from central government would remain the same, and that this would therefore facilitate maintenance of most of the services, even with a halving of council tax. Now, I do not believe that any government of whatever colour in this country would tolerate a system in which councils could opt out of their council tax collection regime and still get money from government coming in at the same rate. That would be...
Now, sir, if you don't mind, just cut you a little bit short. So your question is basically the halving of council tax. Is it feasible?
And the emphasis placed on it. And the other thing, of course, is what happens to this campaign if the elected mayor happens to disagree with all this and becomes a northern version of Ken Livingstone with high tax, high spend policies.
Right, thanks. Can we get an answer?
Thank you.
Mr. Bird, you're going first.
Right, yeah, your second question on whether they choose Ken Livingstone type, well, that's a matter of choice for the electorate. I mean, I'm here to defend elected mayors, but I wouldn't defend every last elected mayor. I don't see how anybody is likely to support both Ken Livingstone and Boris Johnson, but the important thing is that they're both people of ideas, and they were both chosen at different times by the electors of London. Now, as for your point about the government would not put up with a halving the council tax, well, I've got a simple one. I could put the answer in one word to you: Wandsworth Council. Wandsworth Council is under half of the council tax at £682 per year of what Salford is. Now, other London councils are much the same as Salford, but Wandsworth achieved that primarily by doing what I want us to do. It got higher government grants, such as Salford does, much higher than Trafford, but it is spending sensibly to the lower level, and thus it has been able to keep council tax under half of what Salford is, and under half of what many of its neighbours are, who are just more free spending. But if you go to Wandsworth, if you go to Trafford, life goes on, and people don't move out of there. In fact, they're generally pleased to be paying lower council tax.
Thank you.
Hang on, sorry. First of all, right, just to correct one thing, the reason there was so much anger in the room when you mentioned Stoke and Salford prior to this is because you talked about the common denominator being corruption, actually. People in this room heard you make that allegation, and I'd urge you on your side to withdraw any allegations of corruption about Salford.
I'll withdraw that to do with Labour in Salford.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm happy to do
right,
that.
well, we'll get that
People misunderstood.
But I asked the Treasurer a couple of years ago to do a calculation as to what the level of council tax would be if we got the same level of support from the government, and you remember this, Norman, as the London boroughs does. And the answer was that we'd be able to reduce our council tax down to the level of Wandsworth if we had the same level of support from central government that the London boroughs get. So it's not a question of services and cutting services. In Wandsworth's case, it gets subsidised by central government because of the extra money and grant it gets from central government. If we got that money, we'd be able to address that issue too. But in the case of Trafford, yes, there are significant differences in terms of what we provide in Salford. And of course, what they don't want to tell you is that Trafford provides services that in many cases are significantly worse than the service you get in Salford. And I quoted one obvious example, which is care of the elderly. 6,000 people who are helped in Salford because they've got moderate difficulties as elderly people would not be helped in Trafford. And the final point I want you to actually think about, because in that leaflet it says something that's superficially very attractive, which is we're going to reduce money so that every money area gets the same level of support from the council. What every level, every person, whether you're a stockbroker or an unemployed person, you'll get the same level of support from the council. That's not what I came into politics for. I came into politics, and I believe the majority of people elect us, and incidentally give a derisory vote each year to the English Democrats. They elect us because we believe in helping the largest number of people in Salford, and that's the stark choice that you face. Do you help the maximum number, particularly those people who are vulnerable and needy, or do you just dole the money out as though it's some sort of reward? I happen to believe it's about helping the sick, about helping the needy, about helping the vulnerable. That's the job of the council, and as long as I'm councillor leader, that's what we're committed to actually trying to do.
I'll stand up rather than, because people at that can't see. If I was to say this evening, you wouldn't believe me. But of all the years that when we come to set the budget, the biggest argument is the revenue support grant, that we don't get enough money. If I'm wrong on this, say so. People before me who've been on the budget committees prior to myself always had the same challenge. I know Councillor Hines has the same challenge every year. Let's not look at this situation lightly. What Mr Berg is saying, and the English Democrats and Community Action Party, that they would bring a mayor in that could do the most wonderful things in the world. You know, you see the shower spray with the magic dust. Doesn't happen. When we set the budgets in this city, across all the directorates, and even in this time now, with the further 40 million that we've had to cut back, for Mr Berg to come here and say that we could put the revenue for the budget the same as Trafford is complete nonsense. And I mean complete nonsense. You need to go away, Mr Berg, do your homework, speak to me, and we will be speaking tomorrow on the radio. We will thrash this out to the nth degree. Believe me, for Salford to deliver its services, it's cutting and having to cut back on areas where it's affecting the vulnerable. Now I could go into the politics of that, but I don't want to. But I'm sure there's other people in this room share them same views. But we have to do what we've got to do. But I am really disappointed that you've matched up with Salford and you know, other places, Derby. It's not even significant to this city, and it shouldn't even be a drop in the landscape regarding what they're saying.
Young gentleman with his hand up.
Hang on.
Hang on, can I just, excuse me, can I just have a minute? Yeah. Just one point, Councillor, in that I raised Doncaster and Stoke because actually Councillor Mary raised Doncaster first, and I felt it was only right to actually put that in context. Okay, we're here to talk about Salford. Okay. Mr Berg's got his costings, and another thing, he does have connections with Salford, as you know, full know, being a property owner, which I know that you'll bring up later. Right. But a couple of things. I was branch secretary for 7 years on public transport, covers parts of Salford. What disgusts me more is when we're talking about public sector cuts and all this lot, yet we wasted nearly £500,000 over 3 years on Proms in the Park, nearly £500,000 on Tinkeishring, right? They spent £670,000 on 3 BBC programmes. Now as a union rep, that disgusts me, right? When we've got frontline services that are possibly under threat, and yet a council was spending taxpayers' money on them. That's just 3 items, okay? So yes, there is savings to be made, and it's items like that that need to go into frontline services and not their project.
Well, save your elderly care. Brilliant.
I'm grateful to Councillor Mary and Councillor Owen for mostly answering my question, but perhaps Mr Berg would point out exactly how he would halve the council tax. You mentioned possibly about cancelling regeneration. Just like to point out that the items that Mr Morris just mentioned there have already been cut from Salford's budget, so they can't be cut again. How would you halve Salford's council tax?
Well, let me start off with it's what happened. The view inside is very different to the view outside. I mean, I went round and collected the majority of these 10,000 signatures as myself, and in going round door to door, what I found was that Councillor Mary had said it's cut nearly £40 million last year of Salford's budget. Apart from 1 or 2 complaints about the shorter hours in Cadder's Head Library, And apart from meeting people who were employed at the lower end or as contractors to Salford Council who had been made redundant, and I didn't get any response that they noticed that services had been cut, that they were suffering from it. All the problems which I had brought to my attention were long-standing problems going back for several years. So I am saying we cut 40 million, and most people in the public haven't noticed. We'll be able to do a similar thing. We will look at the bureaucrats. We won't, for instance, in last week's advertiser, this last issue, £175,000 spent on legal representation in an employment tribunal. Well, that could have been cut 95%. Whichever.
Chairman, can I answer the question? Those are relevant to a particular incident. Can we get an answer from it?
Right, we will concentrate on cutting the bureaucracy, the pen pushes, the duplication in administration. For instance, now there's local management of schools, the independence in schools managed without backup from a council. I would expect the schools situated in Salford, now that they have local management, not to have a lot of bureaucracy monitoring and doing various functions from Salford, done by Salford Council. They should be done in the school themselves as the independent school. And as I say, the prime area is if we cut on young people budget to the same level as traffic and got rid of the loss on the regeneration budget, that would amount to the money even before going at the bureaucracy elsewhere. As for Councillor Mary saying there are a lot of people who are in care in Salford, what about
why don't you let him finish? You want him to answer the question, let him finish. You want him to answer the question, let him finish. You're not giving him a chance?
Could we have that question answered, please?
Yeah.
Oh.
Still waiting.
Can I just say that I apologise to Mr. Berg, he's not answered the question that was asked by Mr. Middleton. Look, I know things are getting a little bit heated because it's no nonsense. The situation is, for Mr. Berg to come back exactly what he's saying regarding the answer, the letter that you put in last week's advertiser, why don't you answer the question with this letter that you wrote saying it's achievable? Explain how it's achievable, because what you've just said there made complete nonsense of anything that I understand in the structure of budgets. My predecessors before me who've been setting budgets. It cannot be done. Sole argument here is whether we go down your route on the referendum for a mayor and you're successful and you throw everything out the window that has been achieved. Now, which would you sooner see? The achievable that we're gaining or losing that altogether?
Can we go to the next question now? Let's say Councillor Hines, who I think will probably be on the same line.
It's about the point that you made regarding the ice rink, and I assume you're talking about the proms in the park. Well, I'll tell you now that there's a lot of us who are pretty disgusted it didn't go ahead this year. Because we like a bit of culture in Salford. And we brought thousands and thousands of people in from all over the country into Mayoral Park and brought revenue in. And also it brought a marvellous thing for the Salford people. And it's the worst thing that's happened this year, that it's not gone ahead. And there's a lot of people who think the same way that I do. So,
I'm trying to take questions in order, please. We don't jump the queue. Councillor Hines.
Thank you, Chair. Well, if this wasn't such a serious matter, it'd be laughable, wouldn't it? Mr. Berg. I mean, number one, Mr. Berg, do you think the vast majority of people of Salford are thick? Because quite honestly, year on year, And we do have strong debates, as Councillor Owen, as an opposition member, speaks in the council chamber, certainly on the issues of money and the budget. And the main opposition party, understandably, takes me to task year on year about the budget, but never have they got the temerity to talk about a 50% cut in council tax. Never in a million years. Why? Because they know that if that was to be the case, it would be disaster for the people of Salford and the services that we provide. And so you're being totally disingenuous if you really do believe that that is the case. But also, Mr. Chairman, we're talking tonight as though we've already had the referendum and that you have been successful and that we're in a debate now on what the elected mayor would put forward in the future. There's been very little, really, as a proponent of the elected mayor on why you support it. A few things thrown out here and there, which could be one of the most serious positions that the people of this city have ever stated. And your colleague to talk about he would hope that with an elected mayor, 190,000 was it, people would turn out and vote for him. Well, sir, you're in cloud cuckoo land. Let's be quite honest about that. Absolutely stupidity to put that forward. Put that forward. Absolutely.
I thought we were having questions, not speech.
So the point is, let's get down to the situation. I have never been a believer in the cult of the personality. I believe in real democracy. And it was said about the past Labour government, which I was a supporter of. I can tell you, Chairman, I was opposed to them when they came out with elected mayor proposals and made that quite clear in a past life that I had. And got the support then of the majority of people that I went and spoke to in this city. Thank you, Chair.
A question.
No, please, just a question, please. Don't make speeches. I'm not disagreeing with what you said.
Mike Malden from the Community Action Party. And isn't it the reality, Mr. Chairman, that the Labour group who were here this evening in mass numbers, because we know from an email that we also got a copy of from Norbert, Councillor Norbert, that you've cancelled your Swinton Labour Party meeting and you've all turned up here in mass numbers today. So it's no surprise that you're all cheering and clapping and having vile attacks on people who have taken their own time to come here and answer your questions. Now, the question...
He's having the same amount of time as that other gentleman.
The question is, to mainly Councillor Merry, is it right that your political party, that you're leader of in Salford, will use dirty tricks, lies and deceit in order to try and keep your own job by trying to associate Geoffrey Stevens' party and mine with the British National Party by telling lies in relation to the costs, in relation to referendums and future elections? And do you really believe, Councillor Merritt, that Mr Berg will take the trouble to go and collect over 10,000 signatures because he cannot be bothered putting a bit of paint on a shop?
Right, okay, well, I'm glad you asked me that question because it gives me a chance. It gives you a chance to actually refute some of the things, Mr Moulding, that you have said. But perhaps before I do that, perhaps I could just go over the history of your party in Salford, because of course your party did have a success. Oh, actually, I'll get to the microphone. I'm glad you asked me that, Mr Moulding, because I intend to deal with your points one by one. But before I do so, can I just remind you that you have refused to actually defend the actions of your political party in the fact that your political party did win a seat in Salford it won a seat in the Earlham and Cadishead area. A particular council was elected, and I think it's fair to say that far from bringing credit on your political party, he has brought nothing but discredit on your political party. He has barely been seen at surgeries, he has barely been seen at community events, and in fact has left the Community Action Party and become an independent. And I would ask you to defend his actions, because he was a member of your political party, and you, in a letter to me, have refused to be associated with him. You say you are a new political party. In fact, you are not. And the past track record of your party has brought nothing but discredit on the name of the Community Action Party. No, I want to answer your questions now. You've asked me a series of questions. Far from telling lies, I've actually been telling the truth. You accuse me of saying that the actual referendum costs would be in the region of £400,000. In fact, the actual costs are going to be £350,000. So, yes, I was slightly out by 50,000. Originally, the legal information I got from the legal officers would it would have to be held in October. I've made it clear, I'm happy to clarify that. It's not a lie. It's actually basically the same cost. And the fact is that the bulk of that cost has been induced by your party and others collecting the referendum signatures. I've said that those signatures, in some cases, were collected falsely. I can tell you I've received emails and complaints from people that they were systematically misled. You refused, when I raised this with you, to investigate that particular matter. You said it was irrelevant, actually, because the returning officer had already accepted it. Someone like the con man who said, oh, well, the con has already succeeded, there's no point in going over it. I think it is a matter of concern for democracy when people were misled, for example, that they were signing a petition about the Green Lane incinerator, when in fact they were signing a petition about a mayoral referendum. I understand similar tactics were employed in Bury when Mr Berg sought to gain signatures in a previous time. Now, I actually received a note, Mr Berg, did you write to me at the beginning of this year, didn't you? Yes? In which you made it clear that you were disgusted, and I can understand your point of view, I'm not going into the detail. You were disgusted, as you put it, at the decision of the Salford City Council to prosecute you for leaving your shop in a derelict condition.
Put a notice, actually, not
prosecute. All right, okay, put a notice at that stage. And you made it clear, as a consequence of what you saw as a waste of public money, that you were going to interest yourself in politics in Salford for the first time. Now, I took the view that I was not going to refer that letter to anybody, because I think it was a matter of integrity, actually. I wasn't going to be blackmailed one way or the other. I wasn't going to be threatened with a mayoral referendum if we actually served a notice on Mr Berg. Equally, it would be wrong to try and influence the officers, so I didn't actually draw anybody's attention to that, but it was a fact that that's why you did it. If you were so interested in the local politics of Salford, my question to the other side is, why didn't you stand before? Why this sudden interest in the politics of Salford following the decision to serve a notice and to actually take action? And I think that's a legitimate question to ask. What I do object to is being told it's vile lies and slander. And then to be told, for example, that Salford is the same as Stoke or Doncaster, and then not to be told the whole of the actual story. Do you actually know what the Audit Commission said about the failure of the mayor in Doncaster to discharge his responsibilities? Did you know that the English Democrat mayor in Doncaster, the party that you represent, has made admiring remarks about the Taliban, for example, of how much he admired the Taliban? That's the sort of situation you get into, quite frankly. That is true, it's on Wikipedia.
I said it was interesting.
Yeah, right. So that's the sort of situation you get into. Now, my argument has been all along, Mr Moulding, that you have the right to stand this year for the council as the English Democrats have stood every year and been decisively rejected, you have the opportunity to put 20 candidates up across Salford. If they all got elected, then that would be an endorsement by the people in Salford. And I'll tell you this, I promise you this, Mr Moulding, if you put up 20 candidates, they all get elected, I would certainly consider my position as a leader if that's the case. If you would consider your position if they don't get elected in terms of your irresponsibility towards the people of Salford. I want to serve all the people of Salford. I want them to have a chance every year to express their views, which they do through the ballot box. I don't want to just give them a vote every 4 years to elect somebody who can make admiring remarks about the Taliban.
Can I just ask, please, ladies and gentlemen, you can avoid personal attacks. It's not advantage anyway. Gentlemen, I just want to come back quickly to this one. Just half a minute.
If I get a chance to come back to it, yes.
Well, look, you did invite me back, Councillor Mayor, and the first thing I'd like to say is that if the Community Action Party did get 20 councillors elected, of course you'd have to reconsider your position. In relation to Rick Hulton, the Community Action Party is no longer a member of the Community Action Party and will never again be a member of the Community Action Party. So his actions have got absolutely nothing to do with our political party. In relation to the lies that I was referring to was your leaflets with the agenda that was worked out by Councillor Antrobus was the association that you purported our party and our alliance to be associated with the British National Party, and that is nothing but shameful on your part. In relation to the signatures, the reality is the Community Action Party only got involved in terms of campaigning for a yes vote once the referendum had been triggered, and the Chief Executive, Barbara Spicer, certified the petition, and as far as we're concerned, if it's good enough for the Chief Executive of Salford City Council, we are campaigning for a yes vote. In relation to Mr Berg's motives, the point that I'm making again with the strategy devised by your Councillor Antrobus, the reality is you are so desperate for a no vote that you're trying to ridicule an individual that has took the trouble to go and get 10,000 signatures, that has put your job at risk and the Labour group's political power in this city at risk. And you don't like it. That's the reality.
Okay, well, I'm coming after Councillor Owen if I
Can I just say, let's be honest, I call this face down because we wanted to face down Mr Berg and the Remainers on the mayoral referendum, not on the slanderous remarks that are being thrown out. This is not part of the agenda. Never mind pointing fingers. This is about the mayoral referendum. Nothing more, nothing less. Mr Berg has called it in. We're here to hear the answers that we require, that is going to cost this council, if the vote goes its ways, a lot of money. This nitpicking about who's in what party and what other party is nothing to do with it. Sorry, forget Councillor Merry. Myself and Councillor Merry are here to face down the issue on the referendum. And you want to put that in context and answer it to that. Now I suggest, if you have not got a positive reply out of the three of you regarding how you're going to have the council tax, we might as well wrap up and go home. But there's people in here who want to ask you questions, Mr Berg, and you as well.
Do you want me to give you a very short answer?
No, I don't. I don't.
I'll give you a very short answer.
You can answer, but you can't answer.
I'd like the chairman. Sorry, I'd like the chairman to continue with this meeting, and less of interruption, so we can get people who generally want to ask questions to ask them, so they can get a reply.
Well, I'll deal with it very quickly, and I'll deal with it very quickly the points you put directly to me. The reason the BNP is mentioned is the BNP have reproduced your leaflet on their website, making it clear that they support it. At no point did we say the BNP were part of the Mayoral Alliance? We said,
Just
2 minutes.
Mr. Byrne.
Yeah, as you say, you wanted some answers to your questions and you couldn't get them now. The BNP have made it clear that they are supporting the same line as you. I think it is perfectly legitimate to point out that they are part of the parties supporting the mayoral referendum, and that is exactly what was actually put in the article. Now, very finally, you mentioned 175,000 that you wouldn't have spent. That's a classic example of what the sort of accusation you had flown. We spent £175,000 in a court case to make sure that the young people of this city had the right people in charge. That's why we spent the money. You wouldn't have spent the money and you'd have left things as they are. Well, fine. That's the difference between us. And those are the sort of things that we're going to have to talk about in the referendum.
I'm not saying we wouldn't have contested the case. What I am saying is we wouldn't have got a lawyers to spend 175,000. I'm sure Jill Baker didn't spend 175,000 to put her view. I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, to respond to briefly to one or two of the personal things, unbeknown to Councillor Merry, I was actually in 1992 helping a candidate in the general election in Salford, and I went to that Salford count, and I heard Councillor Owen then speak about when he came in third in that election.
Always been a loser in elections.
Yes. So I was involved in Salford in the congestion charging quite a way in the actual campaign. So it's not that I've suddenly come into Salford and never had any interest in Salford politics.
What's this got to do with can you answer the question on
Councillor, well, I have sympathy for what Councillor Owen there says. And I have put forward where we'd look for the expenditure cuts. But I want to speak about Councillor Hines's point about democracy, because a lot is being made of democracy in Salford. Let's put some facts straight. If Labour win no wards, if they were to lose all 20 in next May in Salford, they'd still be in control of the council. There's no election in 2013, they'd be in control till at least 2014. So that is getting on for as long as the 4 years in any case, without the people directly electing the actual person who runs the council. Then we come to is the council really a functioning democracy? I looked at the minutes of the executive meetings. They usually have about 2 items on the agenda and it lasts 15 or 30 minutes. So there's not much discussion there of the main issues. Then we had the Salford riots. Now what happened? They recalled Parliament to meet within a week to discuss the riots in Salford and elsewhere. But was the council recalled? No, it just went on with its normal meeting over 5 weeks later. We're not talking about a democracy which involves people in discussing the critical issues in a serious way. We're talking about transferring what we have now to...
Then we can get specific answers. The gentleman at the back had his hand up all the time.
Excuse me, I want to respond to a thing about...
Stu wants to respond.
Don't mind me walking forward, I won't attack you, Mr. Bird. I've never heard of you. Okay? You didn't get my signature, and I live in Swindon in Chadwick Walk, the precinct. I've been a governor at Sandrose Barlow School for 19 years. I've seen it go from nearly closure to being one of the top schools in the country in the top 5%. If you're talking about BSF, PFI and messing with that, Councillor Merry can tell you hook, line and sinker just what kind of scrap we've had to get the things for our kids for Swindon education. What I'd like to know, and the fear is that the council machinery, very, very complicated. And it's developed over years, longer than Councillor Merry's been in post, longer than actually I'm 62. So I'd like to know specifically from you, just what experience have you got of council machinery? How can you represent me and these people here in relationship, not just to running a council, but what else are you going to do for them? Just answer that question.
In my experience, it's well before Councillor Mary was even on the council. I was actually briefly a councillor in Bury, but so I know a little bit about how councils work. But it will be, what I am bringing to you is the opportunity to vote and to choose who's going to run the council. I mean, that's what the 10,000 signatures in Salford wanted, primarily. They want, most of them, I think, wanted the same thing, in the same democracy as in Manchester, where they will get to choose as who. Well, they say who. I mean, they will have at this moment.
Let me ask you the question another way.
Yes.
You know, how good would you be at a mayor for Salford?
He's not.
I'm not yet a candidate for mayor.
No, well, we're talking about the referendum, not.
No.
We're talking about the referendum, not who's going to be candidate.
Please, can we just ask Mr. Berg has been asked a question about his experience on the council?
What's that got to do with? What's that got to do with directly elected mayor?
The question was,
not
am I
even a
right,
candidate.
sir? Just a minute, can I just clarify?
I live in this borough, okay?
Right.
I want the question answered. I don't want you to answer it. I want him to answer it.
No.
Him, not you.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you, and I don't want you to.
Well, in my opinion...
I don't care about your opinion. I want his opinion.
Gentlemen!
I want his opinion.
It's not a valid question.
I want his opinion.
Well, what?
Question.
You've got to ask the mayor that when he's there.
Exactly.
As I understand it, to Mr. Berg, am I right, sir? Your question to Mr. Berg is what his experience is on a council.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right.
Well, we just gave it. He's been elected before.
Yeah, briefly in Bury Council, but that was a long.
Yeah, well, sit down. That's all you need.
I'd just like to come back to the actual cost of the mayoral that Councillor Mary's saying he's now 350. On the 28th of July, you actually said it was £100,000. On the 30th of July, you said it was £150,000. 3rd of September, 200,000. You then said to the paper it was 400,000. You're now saying it's 350,000. Is this your latest figure?
Is that a question?
No, I'm trying to confirm the actual cost.
If it's a question, I will answer it. I'm quite happy to answer it.
I thought we were asking.
Yeah. I mean, the question is very straightforward. It will cost £200,000 for the referendum. Now, it isn't the first time that your party has involved this council in totally unnecessary costs. You chose, for example, to cause a by-election in Walton North 2 months before the scheduled election was taking place. Every political party condemned that particular action in Salford, but no, you were quite happy to actually expend that money on behalf of the taxpayers of Salford, having complained about the waste. The 200,000 for the referendum, 150,000 we believe for holding the election and the referendum in May, the actual costs ascribed to the referendum. And we've had some experience of this. I don't want to go into sort of bad news for the Liberal Democrats, but we did hold a referendum in May this time.
You've got experience, so you've got 5 sets of figures.
Right, we've got. Listen, I explained.
That's on your Twitter.
Thank you. Thank you. There's been an answer, Mayor. Answer the question. Can we move on?
I explained what the costs were for the referendum and for the election. That's fine. That's all. I'm flattered that they listened to my Twitter carefully.
A gentleman in a purple sweater. Have the next one up.
Thanks. We seem to be talking a lot about how much a referendum is going to cost or not, and talking about what happens if we get a mayor and a council tax. But we could elect a monitoring mini party council, like a treble council tax, or just go rid of it altogether. This should be a debate about whether we need a mayor or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Council tax seems to be on the mayoral lines, but it seems to be the advantage they're putting forward, not about anything else.
Stephen.
What we have said on the leaflets, it's about giving more democratically accountability to the leader that you choose. We've already stated. Now, whether we will give 168,000 people the chance to vote, whether they turn out or not, that's entirely up to them. but they will have the choice, and that is their right to have the choice. At the moment, they don't have it, right? They do not have the choice of picking which one they want as leader of their council, right?
Yeah. That's
why it was a Labour Party policy. That's why your local MPs pushed for it. Your community secretary, when she was, Hazel Blair's pushed for it, right? This is the only Labour group that seems to be against it.
Why?
Right?
Why?
It was directly accountable. It was Labour policy.
Why
it was
so
a Labour
frightened?
idea. It was brought in by Labour.
Question.
Come on, next question.
Hang on, just a minute, because right, the question was asked, right? And first of all, Hazel Blears has made it very clear she is opposed to an elected mayor for Salford, as is Bart.
Oh, one word for one for another.
Right, and
double standard.
These people know that, but they've put it in the leaflet in order
Can you ask us to put it on the website, please?
Right.
It's not. It's not on the.
Absolutely clear. All of
it's not
you,
in public anywhere.
most of you in this room, voted in the recent general election, right? Did you get a direct say in which it should be Mr. Cameron or Mr. Brown? What you were asked to do was to vote for a political party knowing full well what the result of that is. Every person who goes to the polls in Salford knows full well what they're voting for. They're voting for a local parliament for Salford, which then gets to choose who is going to be the leader. That is no different from the system that pertains in Parliament. Everybody knows what they're voting for. The difference is, under our system, they get a vote 3 years out of 4. Under the system that's been proposed, they'll get a vote 1 year out of 4, and all the power will be concentrated in that one person, and they can't do anything about it for another 4 years.
Can't do anything about him for 4 years anyway. He's voted him for 4 years anyway.
Thank you,
the
Chairman.
difference?
If I can make 2 brief points and then ask a question based on those points. And the first point is this. Mr. Berg acknowledged in his response to a previous question that it would be quite possible that if we voted for having a directly elected mayor, then we could get a directly elected mayor who increases the council tax. Now, the whole of the Yes campaign's propaganda is vote for an elected mayor and you will halve the council tax. And I think Mr. Berg's statement today has given lie to the whole of that propaganda campaign. The truth is, it may allow you to vote for somebody, but it doesn't determine what the policies of that person will be. And that is the very misleading strand within the Yes campaign's propaganda. The second point that I want to make is this. We've heard a great deal about how they will end the sustainable regeneration budget. It would be wiped out completely. Now, I've got an area in my ward at the top of Station Road, A666, where that budget has paid for quite a few things. We're doing up the shop fronts. We've done the. We've improved. This is democracy. We've improved the junction. We've planted trees and we're doing up the shop. All that has come out of the sustainable regeneration budget. What the Mayoral Alliance is saying is that if they got somebody as mayor, they would stop that. So none of that work would have taken place. And yet, in the ward itself, Mr. Moulding is putting out leaflets saying that if people voted for him, we would spend more on that. Yes. And the question is, can we believe a word they say? No.
Well, the important thing is if you vote for a directly elected mayor, and I have a directly elected mayor, you will have a chance to do these things, such as halving the council tax, and other ideas which wouldn't otherwise be. Obviously, it's for the people to decide who they elect, and on that point, yes, Councillor Anthropis is right. The people will have a choice, but they will. It won't be the people will choose who runs the council, not a few councillors. And as for his other point about ending regeneration, compare it to traffic. They spend under 1 million. Now they're a year on it. There are parts of Trafford in Stretford, Old Trafford, and Partington.
No.
The question wasn't about the sustainable regeneration budget. The question was, if you ended that budget, why are you promising globally, as citywide, you're going to end it, but locally, you're saying you're going to spend more from it?
So you make the extra not from, to detract from the potholes.
We're not going to spend from it, we will spend from other budgets equally.
Take a seat. Just pointless.
We are tending to go round a little bit in circles. Can you ask specific questions?
It's just statements. It's just statements, not questions.
Can I? My name's John Furst, for those of you who don't know me. And I was first elected as a councillor in 2009 in Pendlebury. I'm pleased to say that last time round I was re-elected with an increased majority. But I'm still a comparatively new councillor, and perhaps don't have the experience that Mr. Berg had when he was a councillor in Bury. But can I say that I've found it a very satisfying experience as a councillor representing the people of Pendlebury and the people of Salford. And what puzzles me is when I listen to Mr. Berg and Mr. Morris, apart from the fact that they're campaigning as though the referendum had already been won and that they were campaigning to be the mayor, they see it purely as being about reducing the council tax and Traffordising Salford, without actually talking about the services that we as a council provide and the facilities that we provide to the people of Salford. As I say, I find it a satisfying experience being a councillor, now as an executive support member, but previously sitting on the various scrutiny committees, and now on the licensing panel, and as a corporate parent, not always in confrontation with the other political parties, but working in partnership with them. What I'm asking really is that they see it, a council being run by one person, the mayor. And I want to know, what role do they see for the other 60 councillors on this council? Or are they saying that they have no role to play and they can be wiped out?
Stephen,
Jeffrey. Don't see that. How do they see a mayor working? Just a second. Am I asking Mr. Moulding this question or those two people? What I'd like to know is how you intend to see a mayor working. Is it going to be a dictator? Or who is he going to work with to get his advice?
Councillors lost most of their effective power when the committee system went, and all the power went to the executive of 10 people. Around 2001. All they do is the 50 councillors who weren't on the executive then, and it's got worse now, is that they review decisions after they're made or can review it. Well, obviously that's a very different thing, especially if you're a member of the majority party or a member of the council, than having a part in deciding what the decisions would be in the committee system beforehand. So the councillors had a very much reduced role after that.
Why was Mr. Moulding get elected?
And whether they're worth the money.
Are you going to scrap councillors?
No.
That we'll have no role to play.
Well, the referendum is not about that, because it's not going to happen. In my opinion, they should have been drastically reduced when that change came in. But that's a personal opinion.
Chair.
How will you work with the councillors? You've not answered the question once again. Mr.
Thank you, Councillor. Don't make speeches, please, ladies and gentlemen, with questions, and then we get an answer.
I have a question, please. I'll have a question, please.
Hi, my name's Paul Dennett. I guess my question really is taking into account the constituents of Salford, really, the communities we all apparently seek to serve there today. And that is, Today, we know unemployment's gone up, okay, nationally. The current government's policies on unemployment are evidently not working. That is, the private sector and the markets are not creating the jobs we need, okay? You're proposing for one of the most, in government speak, deprived areas of the country, which tend to be the post-industrial areas, so the northwest, parts of Wales, if you like, and the northeast especially. You're proposing, if you like, to cut the council tax within our council, Salford. What impact is that likely to have on unemployment? Have you done any sort of analysis, is I guess what I'm asking, around this? Because we know at the moment the public sector creates a lot of jobs. And if we are totally committed to our communities and our neighbourhoods and the people of this city, we would be interested in keeping them in jobs. Your proposals on council tax genuinely concern me on this front. And I'm just interested to know if you've done any real economic analysis, because the economics of your argument just don't seem to stack up whatsoever. I mean, I don't know what textbooks you've been reading, but they're not the same ones as me.
Well, in my view, the council does not exist is to create jobs or employment for its workforce. The workforce exists. The council employees exist is to provide services for the people of the community. It's the community that comes first, and as far as the council tax is concerned, Salford has a disproportionately large number of people who suffer from a high council tax, because a lot of the people are the working poor who are either earning the minimum or slightly above the minimum wage, and those are precisely the people who are hardest hit by council tax. Yes, there will be slightly more unemployment amongst council staff as a result of our proposals, but people will be spending the money as they choose to spend the money, instead of as how the council chooses to spend the money, and in that spending, jobs will be created elsewhere.
Well said, well said.
Right, if I can answer that question as well. Right. But we've done some calculations the last 2 years. Bill, do you remember the figures we had, which I think showed almost 600 jobs have been lost over the last 2 years as a result of the cuts that have already taken place in Salford? Given that we're talking about a far deeper cut, I think we can talk about hundreds and hundreds of people being thrown on the scrap heap. And the problem for that is not just for this council, it's for the very communities that we represent. For example, the shops on the precinct depend on council employees in terms of going into there. The whole private sector in Salford is geared towards serving the needs of the public sector, and if the public sector collapses, the private sector as well. And it's also true, right, if regeneration is so good in Trafford, perhaps Mr. Berg and Mr. Morris would like to explain to us what happened recently, because Trafford advertised for a new economic development officer to oversee regeneration in Trafford. And they had a big glossy advert saying, come and look at the success we've already created in Trafford. Now, was it a picture of Stretford? No, it wasn't. Was it a picture of any of the areas that Mr. Berg described? No, it wasn't. It was a picture of Salford and the success that we've had in Salford, which Trafford tried to claim was the success of Trafford. In other words, the key message from the advert was, come and make a success of Trafford by making it more like Salford.
Councillor, I'm going to have an answer to this, but I believe, Councillor Mayor, we've got out of here at 8:30, otherwise the rates will go up tax.
Can I just have a quick question to Councillor Merrick before?
Quick question.
Yeah, I will make it quick. I won't make a speech. I won't make a speech. Right.
Right. Can I just say, I'm really disappointed the way this meeting's gone. Chair, this meeting was called for everybody to have a say on the mayoral referendum. We've gone from mayors in Derby, mayors in Stoke, unemployment on the political agenda, which is not what we're here for. We're here to ask the question of Mr Berg, the English Democrats and the Community Action Party, how they're going to achieve halving the council tax. No answers. Me personally, I'm disappointed with the unprofessionalism of what we've seen this evening, Mr Berg. It really has been pathetic. I have debated in many, many council chambers, but I have never seen or heard so much lacklustre answers from people who are pushing this city to the nth degree for a referendum on what they believe is a better way forward for this city. Absolute nonsense. If we've got to be out here for 8:30, and thank you, Chair, for chairing this, I will go down this route again tomorrow morning on the radio. But let's make it quite clear. If you want to start cutting regeneration budgets and seeing your streets unswept, the reason being now is because we're in a position of having to monitor the budget to cut back the sweeping cycles. Now that will change in the future. But I mean, if you've come here, and I have to say to you, Mr Moulding, I wish you'd come here with something more constructive. I honestly believed that calling this meeting this evening, with so many people turning up, that the genuine questions would have been asked with genuine replies. And I have to say, if this had been on television, they'd have pulled it. I'm sorry, but that's how bad it's been. And I'm not sorry.
It's a loaded audience.
But I have to say to you, the answers that we required from these people have not been forthcoming. But I thank you all for turning up, and thanks very, very much.
Not finished yet.
Gentleman beard and glasses, you've had your hand up more, that's the man. You've had your hand up more longer than anyone else.
I'm sorry, they should be fresh points and move it on slightly. Too quick. I'd like an answer from Mr Berg as to why he's holding up Trafford and Wandsworth in particular as examples for us to emulate, when they care so little about services. In fact, Wandsworth tried charging for children's playgrounds. This is the model you are holding up for us. Why then? Is it simply that they have low council tax? Secondly, why are you so obsessed with the leader? We are talking about a mayor versus a full council of 60 councillors who represent their electors, who scrutinise decisions, who work within a full council. That is not democracy, and I'd like to know why you think it is that one man with all the powers is more democratic than 60 people accountable to their electors and holding the leadership to account.
What I will say is that, first is on Wandsworth and Trafford. Yes, the most important thing is the council tax, even though there are one or two policies even there I don't agree with. I don't agree with Trafford spending money in rebuilding part of the town hall, and that's the point. I agree with the Labour group there. But so there are economies that can be made even there, but well, I don't know the situation there, so I would probably not agree with. I would probably not agree with it, and wouldn't, and it wouldn't.
Jeffrey, the guy's not letting you speak.
Sit down. If he's not letting you speak, sit down.
I will. No, I don't. It's not necessary to get a cut in council tax to charge for playgrounds, and that wouldn't be done. But as for the point of having a full council versus an elected mayor, by the latest legislation, Councillor, I shouldn't personalise it, the council leader has all the powers of the elected mayor without being directly elected by the people, apart from the ceremonial.
Jeffrey, sit down.
Young lady in the front who's been filming I don't know how you're going to film it when he's talking.
Well, it's not a problem. I won't make a speech. Labour support directly elected mayors. We know that they brought it in as policy. Hazel Blaze wrote a white paper on it, supporting directly elected mayors up and down the country. Just let me finish. What is Councillor Solmeri so frightened of, and why does he not support his own MP on a proposal for directly elected mayors up and down the country? What have you got to hide?
Right, well, let me, I hope you're going to listen to the question. I hope you're going to listen to the answer. Because the fact is that the white paper made it clear it was a choice for councils to make, not something that they had to slavishly adopt. That's why we have a referendum. And Hazel's made it very clear that she does not support, in the local circumstances of Salford, actually having an elected mayor. She
What's good enough for Salford is good enough for everywhere else.
You've been vociferous enough, as I recall, like asking people to be allowed to finish the answer to the question. I'll tell you what I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid for myself. Right? At the end of the day, I am one person, right? And if there was an elected mayor, I might stand, I might get it, I might not. That's not the issue. What I'm afraid for is democracy in Salford. If at any point the council doesn't like me as leader, it could happen tomorrow. Those 60 councillors can vote me out of office and also vote that they disagree. Now, not that I'm suggesting you do it immediately, but they can do it. Right? They can lose confidence in me. They can choose somebody else. Any year, the electorate can choose, and as Mr Moulding was big enough to acknowledge, if 20 Community Action Party got elected, then yes, I would have to reconsider my position. In fact, he just destroyed his own argument by admitting that that was the case. Yes, if we lost all seats in Salford, we'd have to consider our position. The fact that we're in a position of strength in Salford is because we've worked incredibly hard over the years. There are people in this room who disagree, right, who have stood against my candidates and argued against it quite democratically, and I respect their right to do so. But not one of them here has suggested that they want to short-circuit the process and get rid of that democratic process and replace it. That's what I'm frightened of. I'm frightened of the fact that the English Democrats can't win elections in Salford, so they thought that this was a way of trying to sneak a candidate in through the back door. I'm frightened of that. Those are the sort of things that I am worried about. And as for the nonsense about this being Labour Party policy, it is not Labour Party policy. The Labour Party has made it clear it is up to people who have a choice. I've chosen. I'm on the side of democracy in Salford. I want to continue to argue for that, and I hope that the people of Salford will come and vote for something that supports everybody in Salford and not just a few.
Question for the young lady at the end here, and then one more after that, and then I shall ask the gentleman on the table to sum up on behalf of their side for 2 minutes each, and then thank you very much for all being here.
It's just a
You've got the
statement,
next
really. Manchester's just agreed to a vote. Liverpool's just agreed to a vote. Why can't the people of Salford agree to a vote? Why we deny what Manchester and Liverpool have been given?
Chair, for information, the 12 cities were told that they had to have a referendum. It did not go to the people.
Well, the public have decided in this case that they want a referendum. They put the signatures, 10,000 signatures, they want a referendum.
I agree with you on that one. Right? I do agree with you. It's not for the government to dictate, right? Yeah. The referendum, where we got the signatures, right? Nearly 10,500 people signed it, right? But I do agree that the government should not dictate policies down to the council. But as it is the people's right to choose, then it was right to give them the chance for a referendum. We got the signatures, which was a government guideline. And if you remember, the white paper that Hazel Blaze did, she actually wanted to reduce it. She wanted to reduce the 5% even lower, right? But with that one, I must admit, we do agree on that. The government should not be dictating to the other councils.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I have to take the gentleman at the back way. Read hand down now. Yeah, I thought that the gentleman at the back there. Sorry about this. Must be the last question. Then we'll open the summing up.
In the event of
Ben.
Salford misguidedly choosing Mr. Berg. I can't believe that it would happen anyway. People on the right, they already hold these posts. My question really to Mr. Berg, so I'd like to be answered directly. What is, well, two questions really. The first is that what is the time scale in which he produces this fantasy 50% put in council tax without, without producing the balancing economies he would make? That's the first one. Over what time scale? The second is, if he does not meet that, if he were elected, as I say, I doubt that will happen, but if he were, then over the timescale he supposes to do this, if he did not meet it within that timescale, will he resign and not carry on as mayor?
Yes. Well, the timetable the Mayoral Alliance is committed to is a council tax being introduced in April 2013, which is that's when we propose is to halve the council tax. As for your second question, what if it weren't done? Well, we haven't chosen a candidate, and that would be appropriately asked to whoever stands on that policy at that time.
That's it.
But
That's it.
Right, thank you very much for your questions, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask the four gentlemen on the front here to sum up on behalf of their side. I'm going to start with Mr. Berg.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I have given answers, at least outline answers, both on the question of why it's more democratic and on how we'd halve the council tax. I would say it is the notion of having a direct choice is better. Look what happened on the congestion charge. Salford Council fully supported imposing a congestion charge. However, 84% of the people of Salford voted against what their council wanted to reject the congestion charge. I don't think the council is properly in line with the majority of the residents. It's for one reason and then or another. And if it is so bad having to directly elect the person who runs the council, how is it that the one superpower in this country, in this world, United States of America, will be directly electing for 4 years the person who runs the nuclear arsenal and the biggest economy in the world, and they are quite happy with this system. So I don't, and it has lasted a couple of 100 years there. So I don't see that the system is essentially flawed. Indeed, it is more democratic.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid if Mr. Berg's grasp of the American Constitution is as shaky as his grasp of what happens in Salford, we've just seen a good example of it. Actually, funny enough, the voters of America do not directly elect the President of the United States. Right? Each state elects a number of electors, or perhaps we could call them councillors, perhaps, right? Who actually elect, through the Electoral College, the actual President of the United States. In fact, on several occasions, the people have chosen one candidate, and the electors of the Electoral College have chosen another candidate, the most recent of which happened very recently between Bush and Gore. So it isn't a directly elected system. The second point I wanted to make is, of course, they don't believe that the arguments about the democratic change is sufficient. That's why the figures vary very slightly, if at all, in their leaflets. The real bribe, as they see it, is halving the council tax, because they know that the democratic arguments don't actually stack up. We are offering people a system which they've had for many years, where they get a vote to elect people 3 years out of 4, who actually help to decide who is actually the leader and can change the leader at any time. That system has failed for the English Democrats and other parties because they haven't been able to win elections. So they thought they'd try something new of only giving the electorate an election, a vote once in every 4 years for an elected mayor. And of course, some of the powers that the elected mayor have got are dictatorial, but one of the problems they've got, which they've not told anybody about tonight, is that 2/3 of the council can object to the budget and to the level of council tax being proposed by the elected mayor. So actually, they know full well that they couldn't get their budget as it's currently constituted through the council, because every single political party, every single representative on that council has rejected their figures as being pie in the sky. The independents have rejected the figures, the Liberal Democrats have rejected the figures, the Conservatives have rejected their figures, and the Labour Party. Now, myself and Councillor Owen haven't always been known to see eye to eye, I think it's fair to say, and have been known to have some quite robust debates. But ask yourself why, if we're disagreeing on a lot of things, we're absolutely united on this. We see this as a threat to democracy in Salford. We see this as a threat not to an individual political party, but to the real vibrancy of debate that takes place, to the level of accountability that already exists. All that will disappear. And final insult of insult, to suggest that everybody, whether they come from Worsley, whether they come from Swinton, whether they come from Broughton, should receive exactly the same amount of money, regardless of their needs. We don't think of life in Salford like that. We think of life as a community of providing things for everybody in this city. But above all else, we want... Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moulding. Wasn't it you who asked for people to be given the right to actually speak and to say things? Apparently that right is denied to people who happen to disagree with you. But the fact remains that for us, the most important thing is when people have needs, wherever they live, we actually meet those needs. When people are sick, we meet those needs. When people are elderly and need the help, even if it's only to a small degree, we try and meet those needs. When people are in care, we doesn't just say, oh, we'll farm them out to adoption or we'll spend less money on them. We meet those needs. When people have real opportunities in Salford, we sought to give them the means of actually meeting those opportunities. We brought the BBC to Salford, not because it was some nice, prestigious project. Perhaps you might listen, you might learn something here. We brought them because they gave chances to people in Salford. And that's the choice. You have the politics of pessimism on one side, saying slash the council tax because the council can't really do something. And you have the politics of optimism on our side, saying we still believe in this city because we happen to live here, Mr. Berg. We still want the opportunity to provide services. We still want the opportunity to do the best for this city, and we'll continue to do that and fight for these people of this city, rather than actually simply say you can measure the worth of people by how much money they have to pay. We don't believe in that. We believe in the worth of everybody, and we'll continue to fight for it.
Stephen? Take as long as Councillor Merry did. That wasn't 2 minutes.
Quite interesting that he talked about democracy when democracy is only held in the hands of a few and not being given to the hands of 198,000. Right. Democracy is going to reinvigorate the turnout, according to your Hazel Blair's MP anyway. 34% turned out the last election. Right. Yes, you did get 50% of the vote. That gives you 18% of the electorate in total. That's not a mandate for anybody. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a mandate for anybody.
Okay, you let him. Everybody else speak. Let him speak.
Making the people choose. There's been a lot of assumptions here that there'll be an English Democrat candidate or a CAP candidate or Jeffrey Berg. Right? They're just assumptions. No, where have you seen that? It's nowhere. Because the Alliance has not chosen a candidate yet. Okay? It's as simple as that. Right? So all your assumptions are just blown out the water. Thankfully, we're following the Labour plan because obviously the Salford Labour group sent it out to somebody who's actually an English Democrat member. Thank you for that. but it's about bringing democracy back. The hands of 168,000 people can put a cross against the person that they want.
Yeah, democracy.
Right? They want.
Choice.
Nobody, other than the councillors, has put a cross against Councillor Mary, or sorry, I won't personalise it, against the council leader. Right? Nobody's put a cross for him to be council leader.
No, they haven't. No, they're not.
No, they've not.
Did you vote him in?
No. Other than the councillors, nobody in this city voted for Councillor Merritt to be leader. That is a fact. He was voted in as councillor in his ward, then the other councillor friends voted in council as leader. It's an absolute fact. Okay? Yes, and I don't like that system either. I believe the people should choose, because then you wouldn't have a three-line whip in the House of Commons going against what their MPs. You voted for your MPs to do a certain thing, a three-line whip told them no, you're not. And I think that was wrong as well. Okay. But it's about bringing democracy back to the 168,000 voters.
Move the vote.
Yay!
Move the vote.
Yay!
Can I make the same statement again? Thank everybody for coming. May I thank Brian for chairing this meeting, and I'll see you in the morning. Continue battle. I have to say to you, this did not turn out as I expected it. I'm sure you sat there realise that.
Yeah.
The level of debate has been disappointing. We've not had no clear-cut answers. We're not going anywhere with the Community Action Party or the English Democrats or Mr Berg. From what I've seen this evening, the three that have put their arguments across have all floundered. There's not been one sense of profit in what they've said. It's obvious personal attacks on Councillor Merritt they feel merited. I don't. I didn't face this down for this. And when I listen to Mr Berg's understanding of economics and the way the city is run, I suggest you get a copy of this regeneration budget. Study it very carefully, all three of you. Make sure you've got some sense in here how it works, how the formulas work and how the council works collectively, irrespective of what parties we're in. We work collectively to deliver a budget. I know. Excuse me?
You abstained.
I abstain on certain issues, but the budget is passed.
And you did nothing to oppose it.
Mr Moulding, don't interrupt on something you're talking complete nonsense about.
I'm not talking nonsense.
Right? Now,
You're sat there.
Excuse me.
You're on both time, Councillor.
Thank you.
Mr Moulding, personal attacks on me are like water off a duck's back. Right? I suggest you keep the aperture under your nose just shut, just a while I finish. Okay?
Don't say what I said.
No, I'm just mentioning to you what you need to do. Good physical action. The issue that we've got to put straight this evening is that we're in a no-win situation because these people have failed to deliver. And if somebody out there can tell me coherently what the answers are on the mayoral referendum, plus halving the council tax, well, you're a better man than I'm going to do. I'll tell you that now. And I appreciate you sitting here having to listen to so much rubbish. A report that much rubbish being removed every day. We've got it saying again tonight. Sorry I'm being insulting, but I call this meeting genuinely to face these people down, because I know what's going to go on the Twitters. Owen said this, John Berry said that, they'll be on the leaflet, Owen said that, you know, there'll be a video made. I'll tell you what, if we'd have been on television this evening, they'd have pulled the plug. Right? Quite seriously now, I want you to go away this evening, and I know these people in this room, that are not politically motivated and have got genuine opinions of their own. But you assess what we've achieved here this evening. I'm trying to drag out of the 3 people concerned where we go forward. And I don't think we've achieved a hell of a lot. But I thank you for coming. And if I've got to do this again, I'll think twice. Thank you very much.
In support of democracy, can we take a vote after listening to the speakers tonight and see whether anybody has been persuaded to change their mind?
Considering the Swinton group have moved their meeting to it,
it's a loaded...
Those against the directly elected mayor, show your hands. That's democracy.
Not many, it's a loaded audience.
Swinton Labour group meeting in here instead of the other place.
And I can shout louder than anyone. Thank you for your attendance, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed it. I don't think we've resolved anything. All we've done is polarised opinions. So again, I thank the 4 gentlemen on the platform. 2 of them will be tomorrow morning on radio.
Loaded audience.